Good afternoon, everybody. Well, good morning. I'm sorry, I'm in a different time zone with you guys. Uh, I know I can't hear you, but I hope everybody's doing well. Like Nick said, this is just an overall general review of the course. And first of all, can everybody hear me on my end? Let me make sure that's possible.
If you can, just need somebody to put into the chat box that they're able to confirm audio.
So I think that is everybody can hear me.
Patrick, we can hear you. We confirmed audio with them ahead of the beginning of the course.
Okay, good to go. All right, we'll get started then. Good morning, once again. This is GO 205 Disaster Recovery. Unit 1, the Introduction to the Recovery Concepts. It's like Nick said, this is a general overview of the course and its content. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, like he just said, and we'll answer them accordingly. Let's get started.
It looks good. We've got a lot of confirmation.
All right, awesome. All right, course goals, of course, just to increase the participants' understanding of the your local government responsibilities and challenges associated with disaster recovery, and to provide a basic forum for discussion of lessons learned in disaster recoveries at the local level. And this is also prepare participants to develop and implement a pre-disaster and recovery plan. Basically, what Nick just said earlier, you're developing your own pre-disaster plan according to the G205 FEMA local recovery plan. Explain the key concepts of the National Recovery Framework and how they affect your community. We'll briefly go over the NDRF as we go through the course. We also describe how your roles and responsibilities changes as the disaster transitions from response to recovery. And then we'll define the key recovery terms and concepts, including the whole community and community resilience. And then we'll differentiate between pre and post recovery plans. NDRF, or the National Disaster Recovery Framework, this has been developed a while back by FEMA. So the NDRF provides a guidance that enables effective recovery support to disaster impacted states, tribes, and local jurisdictions. It provides a flexible structure that enables disaster recovery managers to operate in a unified and collaborative manner. It also focuses on how best to restore and redevelop and revitalize the health, social, economic, natural, and environmental fabric of the community and build a more resilient nation. Because the NDRF have the recovery guiding principles that you can see on roles and responsibilities. The NDRF is a conceptual guide designed to ensure coordination and recovery planning before a disaster, and defines how we work together following the disaster that best meet the needs of states, local, and tribal governments, communities, and individuals in their recoveries. Like I said earlier, this has been developed by FEMA, which describes the recovery guiding principles, your roles and responsibilities, the core capabilities, which there are several of those. There's planning, there's public information, and there's operation coordination, and health and social services and housing. The coordinated structures is another key in the NDRF. Your planning guidance and your overall process sustainability. Anybody have any questions? Please put them in the chat box. Remember, the NDRF is broken in 4 stages. Stage 1, the pre-disaster preparedness. Now, this is broken down in the beginning. Now, the recovery continues to depict the level of effort associated with each phase of recovery. It is important to understand that the actions taken before a disaster pre-disaster preparedness, and those taken in early stages of recovery will impact the recovery process. This continuum includes 4 stages of activity: pre-disaster preparedness, like post-disaster in the short term, in days and a couple of weeks, then intermediate, which is weeks into months, and then the long-term process, which is months into years. Now, I have first seen that in hand as the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, both preparedness to short-term, intermediate, and long-term in that disaster. Recovery planning, preparedness. This is something we all should know at this stage, because when a disaster happens, we got to prepare before it happens. Recovery planning, they have a mitigation planning and implementation. Community capacity and resilience in buildings. Conducting disaster preparedness and exercises, and partnership with buildings, and after-worker protocols and disaster plans for services. Now, there's some things we got to take part in. Short-term recovery. Doing this, the short-term recovery is days into weeks. Some of the examples are mass care sheltering. This includes provisions to integrate mass care and emergency services. Debris clearance. Got to have the initial focus on clearing the primary transportation routes, because the emergency services guys got to get to where they need to go to help and aid other people. Business. Establish a temporary and intern infrastructure to support this business before reopening. Emotional and psychological. This is a key one here. Identify the adults and children who benefit from counseling or behavioral health services and begin treatment. And the public health and health care. You need to provide emergency and temporary medical care and establish appropriate surveillance protocols. The mitigation activities are access to understand the risk and the vulnerabilities. We're going to get more into this and also in the intermediate. Intermediate terms of recovery. This is where we get into the weeks and months, as I said earlier. Housing. Provide accessible terms and housing solutions. The infrastructure repair. Plan immediate infrastructure repair and restorations. Debris removal. Yes, we're doing this in the beginning in the short term, but it also is happening in the immediate term as well. Business. Support the re-establishment of businesses where appropriate and support the establishment of business recovery one-step centers. Emotional and psychological. We're still engaging at this point, because in engaged support networks, there's always ongoing care. Public health and health care. Ensure the community and care through the temporary facilities, because storm just happened, the disaster just took place. You also want to provide those services. Mitigation and plans and activities. Inform the community members of opportunities to build back stronger. That is the whole purpose of mitigation, to build back stronger. Now, your long-term recovery, this is months into years. Nobody ever knows how long, how many months, or how many years it might take to recover from a disaster. But in this phase, permanent housing need to be established. Develop permanent housing solutions. Infrastructure repair, rebuild. Rebuild infrastructure to meet future community needs. Economic revitalization. Implement economic revitalization strategies and facilitate funding to business rebuilding. Once again, ongoing counseling and behavioral health. We got to follow up on those counseling and those behavioral health issues and cases management services. Reestablish of healthcare facilities. Of disrupted healthcare facility, we need to get it back, get it reopened, reestablish new ones. Mitigation and planning activities. Mitigation is always going to happen. Implement mitigation strategies at this point. Now, this is a big one here. Whole community approach. This one, is very important here because it takes the community to build back. Now, after Hurricane Katrina, Congress passed a law that called for a more effective way of managing post-disaster recovery. For instance, the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act in 2009. This was when the president tasked the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Department of Urban Development, HUD, to strengthen disaster recovery for the nation. And this policy directive 8, this was issued in 2011, to establish national preparedness goals. That same year, FEMA released both the National Disaster Recovery Framework and the whole community approach. See, the greater empowerment and integration of resources from across the community, and that's what we're looking for. A stronger social infrastructure with the whole community approach. See, the national preparedness goal for FEMA, the whole community, is a focus on enabling the participants in preparedness activities of a wider range of players from a private and non-profit sector, including non-governmental organizations and general public, in conjunction with participation of all levels of government in order to foster better coordination and work relationships. Increase individual and collective preparedness. So in Sacramento County, your guys are committed to achieving and fostering a whole community emergency management system that is fully inclusive in individuals with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. Am I going too fast for some, or do I need to slow down? So today, this is a general overview, a high-level overview of this course. All right, the Stafford Act. This is designed to bring an orderly and systematic means of federal natural disaster assistance for state and local government. You know, there's two major pieces of legislation for the federal government role in the Robert T. Stafford Act and Emergency Management Assistance Act, and more recently, the Sandy Recovery Improvement Act. See, the Stafford Act was developed in law in 1988, was designed to bring an orderly, like I said earlier, and systematic means of federal and natural disaster assistance for state and local government carrying out their responsibilities to aid citizens. Now, the Sandy Recovery Act, yes.
Patrick, let's take a second here. We're getting pretty deep into the course now. We just want to make sure you all have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have so far. If you could please use the question function now to submit those questions, we'll make sure we get those answered. So we'll take a couple minutes for questions to come rolling in here. Okay. Looks like we don't have any questions coming in at this point. And as Patrick said, this initial session is the overview for the rest of the course. This one will be a little bit shorter than the others. This one will be closer to 45 minutes than an hour. Some of the later ones will be a little bit longer. So just keep that in mind. This is the initial introduction overview of the course. Thanks. Patrick, looks like you're
everybody. All right, thanks, Jake. As I started out earlier, the Sandy Recovery Act, you know, this was, like I said, adopted in 2013. Congress passed this act authorizing several significant changes to the way FEMA delivers disaster assistance. I have firsthand experienced this. They do change often. They can say FEMA flexible. This authorized several significant changes. This is intended to improve the efficiency and availability of FEMA disaster assistance. And it makes the most cost-effective use of taxpayers' dollars. That is the whole purpose of the Sandy Recovery Act. Now, disaster resilience. Historically, disaster recovery was defined as an effort to put physical community back together again. But contemporary perspective is that disaster recovery is a social process encompassing decision making about restoration and reconstruction activities. Now, local resilience with regard to disasters means that the locale is able to withstand an extreme natural event without suffering devastating loss, damage, diminished productivity, or quality of life, and without a large amount of assistance from outside the community. Now, here's some characteristics of resilience. If you have some, you can go ahead and put it in the chat box and let me know and see if we can all get it right at the same time. Redundant. With several functions similar to components so that the entire system does not fail when one component fails. Now, I can't say on one of the disasters that I've seen and experienced, they didn't have a lot of redundancy. So this is what's being developed when disasters happen so they can do the workaround. Being diverse with several functionality, different components in order to protect the system against various threats. Being very efficient. So with a positive ratio, that's understanding energy supplied to energy delivered by a dynamic system. So everybody understand that. A positive ratio of energy supplied to energy delivered by a dynamic system. It's part of resilience. Being autonomous with the capability of operate independently on outside control. Strong with the power to resist attack or other outside force. Interdependent with system components connected so that they support each other. Now, being adaptable. This is with capacity to learn from experience and the flexibility to change. And most important is collaborative. It's multiple opportunities and incentives to broad stakeholders participation. So this is characteristics of resilience. Now, if we apply those in your recovery plan, it will make more of a solid plan. Building resiliency into recovery. Now, this is something I like. Building resiliency into recovery. Following an incident, recovery efforts can be leveraged to implement solutions that will increase community resilience in the economy, housing, natural and cultural resources, the infrastructure, and health and social services, and government sectors. See, recovery projects that increase resilience can occur in any of the community systems outlined above. For instance, housing and infrastructure projects may increase resilience by rebuilding housing to meet the new building and accessibility codes that minimize future damages or relocating critical infrastructure out of hazardous areas. Other resilience strategies could focus on diversifying the economy and bringing sustainable industries or assisting community organizations to increase the resilience of all populations through preparedness efforts. Here's some examples of a type of recovery plan. Here's 3 types. The American Planning Association identifies 3 types of these plans. Operational, which is limited to pre-disaster. It may be an annex of the local emergency management plan. A policy. You got to have a policy in place for pre-disaster, because you don't have nothing written in stone. You don't know what to do or what to follow. Recovery. This is a post-disaster. A lot of people have their post-disaster plan. In this course, we're going to focus on only 2 types, 2 and 3, the policy and the recovery. Now, a pre-disaster recovery plan will address issues in a general way that can apply to any event that might occur. See, the pre-disaster plan establishes a managerial structure for handling the recovery and defines general policies regarding issues like hazard mitigation, adjustment to land use policies, and priorities and policies and procedures for funding of recovery activities. See, planners can focus on the policy issues that communities will face regardless of specific pattern of destruction of the disaster may cause. Everybody's following along? Great. Now, in recovery to post-disaster, it's developed after the disaster has occurred to deal directly with the known consequences, like debris removal, structures failing, levees breaking. This distinguishes features of post-disaster plan is not only in the timing of its preparation, but also its orientation toward physical planning and urban design. This type of plan would include specific details about recovery projects, organizational priorities, and community recovery goals. Now, in this unit, we know several things. We explained some key concepts of the National Disaster Recovery Framework and how they affect your community. We also describe how your roles and responsibilities change as the disaster transitions from response to recovery. Then we went on to define the key recovery terms and concepts, including the whole community and community resilience. And we differentiated between pre- and post-disaster recovery plan. All right. Now that contains Unit 1 of this G205 recovery course. For any questions or comments, please put them in your chat box, and Nick and I will be able to answer them at this time.
And just a quick note to everybody, I have distributed the slides for this unit to everybody, and it should be connected to your Outlook invite. We are also attaching the unit slides for each of the other units to those invites. As we said, this first unit is really just an overview for what you're going to be learning throughout the course. So this one's a little shorter. We really try to keep these closer to 45 minutes per Sacramento County's request. So we want to make sure that it's not taking too much time out of your days. It should be a quicker learning environment. So, but any questions that you guys should have, just please let us know. Thank you. All right, Patrick. Doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. Do you want to say any last words?
I have none. If they don't have anything for me, I don't have anything else to put out. But thank you, everybody, for participating today. Our next session will be Thursday at the same time, same back channel. And just please be here at least 5 minutes before we get started.
All right. And everybody, just a reminder, make sure that you go through and download all of those attachments that are listed under the handout tab. we'll continue to use these attachments throughout the course, and there will be additional ones that come in additional units, but just make sure that you're able to download them before we conclude the course today. So thank you all for attending, and I'll look forward to see you guys on Thursday. Thanks.